Yep,
Okay, good. So
great.
go ahead with the mission statement, please.
Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone regardless of religious or non-religious background and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Irene. That was beautiful. And before I get started on Karen's bio, I just wanted to let people know that she's willing to answer questions this evening. So if during her presentation you think of questions that you'd like to ask her, please type them in the chat box. And also, I forgot to ask you all to put your names and where you're from in the chat box, as well as if you're an affiliate leader, if you're a caring listener, or if you're on the board. And let me go ahead and get started on her bio, which is pretty amazing. Karen Perry is a skilled pilot and a 36-year veteran flight attendant for Delta Airlines. As an aviator, she holds commercial pilot and flight instructor certificates and previously worked as an emergency medical services corporate and regional airline pilot. Juggling her aviation career and being a mother to 3 young children, 2 with special needs, was the ultimate challenge. Her oldest child, daughter Morgan, suffered severe epileptic seizures starting at 6 weeks old. Karen's youngest son, Luke, was autistic. Sandwiched between the two was the more typical and ever-entertaining son, Logan. Karen was determined to make the best life possible for each of her children. As with many parents facing the emotional strain of raising special needs children, Karen's marriage ended in divorce. Being a single mother to 3 brought new challenges, including breast cancer. Twice over a decade, she beat the odds in her battles with cancer. Thinking that she had finally made it through the toughest times with the devastating diagnosis of 2 of her children, major health scares, and divorce, Karen had no idea of what loomed ahead. On the night before Thanksgiving 2011, Karen lost all 3 of her children, along with their father, in a plane crash. Daughter Morgan, 9, and sons Logan and Luke, aged 8 and 6 respectively, were gone in an instant when the plane they were in slammed into the Superstition Mountains east of Phoenix, Arizona. The story made national headlines and was featured on the Oprah Winfrey Network as part of its Super Soul Sunday series. Everyone wanted to know, how does a mother comprehend, let alone process, such a loss? Her memoir, Angels 3, The Karen Perry Story, answers that question and faithfully documents her life journey as an aviator, mother, and survivor. The book takes readers deep inside Karen Perry's world of aviation, the challenges of parenting special needs children, and the indescribable pain of every parent's worst fear come true. This skilled pilot and grieving mother was left to search for clues about what happened that night and why. Her search for the truth leads to a startling revelation, legal battle with the Federal Aviation Administration, and a troubling question: was the crash avoidable? Today, Karen Perry has turned horrific tragedy into new hope as executive director and co-founder of the nonprofit organization 3 Wings of Life, which offers therapeutic equine assisted learning programs to educate and uplift children. That's www.3 wingsoflife.org. I'll type that into the sidebar. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Karen Perry.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Irene. It's always a little weird when I hear all that. I guess because even after so much time has passed and the accident that my children were in, which I'll get into in a minute, but it happened in 2011. And yet it's hard. It doesn't sink in totally, you know? So I have to sit with that for a second. So for those of you who don't know me and don't know my story, or for those of you who do, in 2011, I had 3 children, ages 9, 8, and 6, and they were going to visit their father for Thanksgiving. Their dad was a pilot for American, and he moonlighted for a company that had a fleet of aircraft that did air attacks. So that they did air traffic control basically for the big fire bombers that you see during the summer with the fires. And he had moved away to Safford, which is about a 20-minute flight from Mesa, Arizona, near Phoenix. 3-hour drive. So naturally, he was taking the kids for Thanksgiving, and he preferred to fly instead of negotiate that long drive. So the day before Thanksgiving in 2011, he flew out with 2 of his peers, one who was a pilot, the other who was an avionics maintenance person. And they came and picked up the kids, and it was late and it was dark. Well, it wasn't late, it was about 6:30 in the evening, but it was pitch black dark here. And they took off out of Mesa, and the pilot, my husband was in the back, by the way. He was in the back seat with my kids, and the pilot that was flying got disoriented and flew the airplane into the side of Superstition Mountain, which ironically is literally in my backyard. So the night of the accident, we'll have to back up a little bit. That was a weird day because it started out like a normal day for any busy mom with 3 kids. I got up and I was getting my kids ready for school. Actually, my oldest, my daughter Morgan, and my middle son Logan, they had half days at school that day because it was the day before Thanksgiving. So I was getting them ready. My son Logan did not want to go to school for some reason that day. He begged me to not make him go to school that day. And I had to, I had to make him go because, you know, as a mom, if you let that go once, and then it's not a good thing for the future. So I finally got them all off to school. My youngest stayed home. He didn't have school that day. And on top of that, I was really sick. And so that day, I laid on the couch while he ran around the house. He hijacked my computer, and he wasn't supposed to have it, but he literally took hundreds of photographs of himself that day. Gosh, which I'm so grateful that he disobeyed me because I have that now. So the day went on, my kids came home, and it was time to get ready to go get on the airplane. And my child care provider offered to drive them to the airport. And there was a bit of a, you know, I can do it. And she said, no, I can do it for you. And because I wasn't feeling well. And I was so grateful that she did it, because had she not done it, I would have seen the accident driving home. It happened literally 6 minutes after they took off. And like I said, the mountain where they hit is in my backyard. So that night was really surreal. Like I said, I was sick, and they were supposed to take off at 6:30 and arrive there about 10 to 7. And I sent a text to their dad right before 7 saying, did you make it in okay? And I never heard anything back. But, you know, that's happened before, and I know people get busy. They don't always respond right away. And I kind of drifted back off to sleep. And then a little while later, I got a phone call, and it was my childcare provider, and she was in tears. And she said, you know, Karen, there's been an airplane crash. And I didn't get it at all. I was like, well, why are you telling me this? You know, planes crash every day. And she said, well, they linked it to the company that my husband was moonlighting for at the time. So, so I got out of bed, and I was concerned, but I really didn't think that it was, I thought, well, maybe something happened and the plane went down and they're probably all fine. It really didn't sink in that it was serious. But then it was weird because people started showing up to my house. I mean, people just started coming over to my house, and my close friend came over, but people that I didn't know that well were coming over to my house. And they started taping up my windows. I didn't have window coverings in the front by my front door, and they were taking newspaper and they were taping newspaper to my windows. And I was like, oh boy, what's going on? And I had actually called the owner of the airplane, and I said, I understand one of your planes is down. And it was actually his brother who was piloting the plane that night. And he said, you mean the sheriff hasn't been there yet? And that's really when it hit me how serious it was. And it wasn't long after that that the sheriff did show up, along with all these other people that were just around me. It was really weird. And he told me that their plane had gone down and they didn't know anything really. They didn't know much. They had sent emergency services out there, and that they were looking. Yeah. About 2 hours later, and I don't mean to be macabre, but about 2 hours later, they found my daughter's hand. And they knew it was her because she had fingernail polish on her fingers. And she was the only female on the plane. It was her and her 2 brothers and their dad and 2 men. And that was pretty hard to take. And beyond that, I really don't have a whole lot of memory of that evening or a whole lot beyond it. It was just really surreal. In fact, it's still surreal. So I guess that was my point that I was trying to make earlier, was that no matter how much time passes, the shock, you know, the initial shock wears off, but the long-lasting effects never change. And having said all that, I'd love to talk about them for a few minutes to try to add some levity to this, because it is a pretty heavy thing to talk about. Here's a picture of them. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, maybe you can now. So this was my daughter Morgan, 9, and my middle son Logan, who was 8, and my youngest Luke, who was 6. And they were just delightful kids. They weren't perfect kids. No kids are, but they were real special kids. My daughter did have special needs. She was born 6 weeks after she was born. She presented with epilepsy, and it was severe. She would have seizures for 40 minutes at a time, and it would happen in the hospital, and they wouldn't be able to make it stop. And she, in her short life, had 5 brain surgeries. and she was never controlled completely, but she was a pretty incredible kid. She did everything the doctors said she wouldn't do, because they said she's never going to walk, she's never going to talk, she's going to basically be a vegetable because of all these seizures, right? And she did all those things. She didn't articulate particularly well, so there was some communication problems there, but she was just a super incredible kid, and very bright and very funny with her brothers. You know, she would tell them to go to timeout, and she was like the mother hen. My middle son, Logan, was just like a hell on wheels kid. He was sandwiched in between two special needs because my youngest had autism. So he was extremely precocious, very funny. He would just do the funniest, he would do and say the funniest things. To give you an example of how smart this kid was, he would, this is when he was like 6 even, he would make up all these invitations for his friends. He loved to throw parties. So any excuse to have a party, and he would make up invitations, and he would send them. He'd find out his friends' addresses and he would mail them. And then the parents would call me with the RSVPs, and I had no idea what they were talking about when they would call RSVPing for this party that he would set up, you know, things like that. One time I got a phone call from a guy who said, he said, "Is Logan Perry there?" And I said, "Why do you want to talk to him? I'm his mother." And he said, "Well, I'm just trying to reach him because he signed up for continued education online." I was like, he's 7 years old. He would just do really, really funny things. And he was very outgoing. He loved people, but he especially loved women. And it was interesting because there were a lot of, what do you call it? Like precognition or whatever about their impending death. I found out months after their death, one of the teachers where he went to school had gone to school that day, the day that they were killed. And he went up to one of the secretaries and he said, "I'm just coming to say goodbye because this is my last day and I won't be back." And I was like, wow, I found that out later. And my daughter that night didn't want to get on the airplane, and she had a tantrum at the airport, and it was witnessed by a lot of people. So I heard about that later. And then my youngest son, Luke, turned to his nanny and said, "I'm really going to miss you." And she said, "Well, I'll be back on Sunday to pick you up." And he just looked at her and said, "No, I'm really going to miss you." So interesting things like that. I mean, I could talk about them all day, all the things that they've done since that time to let me know that they're around. And I know that not everybody is lucky enough to get those signs, but thankfully I have, and I'm very grateful for that. So my youngest, Luke, was just a delightful, sweet child. And he was diagnosed with autism when he was, I'm trying to remember, he was just under a year old. And things may have changed since that time, but back then, I think it was generally accepted that 18 months was a benchmark. And so the fact that I had tested him at 12 months was a little soon. So we tested him again at 18 months, and it was reaffirmed. But with the hope that he actually was probably going to lead a relatively normal life. And after being with a child with autism, I believe that we're all on the spectrum somewhere. I mean, I really believe that we're all somewhere on that spectrum. It's just some are a little more than others. And other than that, he was very bright. He was a savant. He taught himself how to read and write when he was 2, and I have no idea how he learned it. He loved to take photographs, and he took a lot of them. And he would take my phone and take pictures on my phone. And like I said, he hijacked my computer, and he wasn't supposed to do that, but he did. And he took a lot of pictures that, to be honest, I'm not even sure if I've seen all of them, because there's hundreds and hundreds of them. So, so with that, of course, a huge loss, and I don't ever compare myself to other people. I might as well just say that right now, because I've heard that a lot, you know, well, your loss was so much more, you know, I only lost one. It's like, what? What do you mean you only lost one? One is too much. So I hope people don't take that from me, but I know that people think that sometimes, and I don't compare myself to other people. At any rate, the loss, of course, any loss is huge when it's your child, and it doesn't matter how old they are or how long it's been. It doesn't matter. It's extremely hard. And I have a lot of compassion for any parent who has had to travel down this path that none of us wanted to be on. What else was I going to tell you? I got way more emotional tonight than I thought I would. But you know what? I have learned that it's really super important to feel. And I know a lot of people try to suppress their feelings, especially around people that haven't been down this road. They will not understand. A lot of people won't. I know that I'm in a safe place here, so it's a little bit easier for me to turn my emotions loose, and it's not something I do very often. But I guess you can all take it as a sign that I do feel safe with you all, and I know that you all understand. And it's important that people feel, and society tells us that there's a lot of signs from society that we get that let us know that oh, this has gone on too long, or you know, it's time to move on, it's time to get over this. We don't get over losing our children. Nobody does, and there's no such thing as that. There's also not very much tolerance, I think, for grief in this society, and it's a very important thing for us to feel and to experience. So with that, where else do I want to go with all this? Many beautiful things have come out of this tragedy, one of which is a nonprofit that I started for kids called 3 Wings of Life. We started, gosh, it's been, I think 7 years ago now. And we started with just going to our local church and bringing kids from the neighborhood, and we would serve them hot meals, and we would spend time with them. You know, we would have like rooms that they would, every 15 minutes, you know, you'd play sports for 15 minutes and you go have something to eat, and then you would go, and the kids would just swap around, and we had several volunteers that would make this happen. And we did it once a week, and the dream that we had was always to have a ranch for kids and a place of hope and healing for children. So eventually we were able to make that happen. 5 years ago, I got my first horse for that purpose. Not my first horse, but my first horse for that purpose. And we now do therapy with children. It's called equine assisted growth and learning. And we have a therapist, and I work with a therapist, and we bring a child or more, or sometimes the whole family, and we do equine therapy. which has just been a huge blessing and a beautiful thing to watch, and a beautiful thing to be able to do. And I do it, of course, in memory of Morgan, Logan, and Luke. So that's just been a wonderful, wonderful thing that I've been able to be involved in. I also have a little miniature horse that I take to schools for autistic kids, or sometimes typical kids, but I take him around. He's the cutest little thing. You can see his picture if you go to that website. His name is Clancy, and the kids adore him. And so that's been something else that's been really beautiful that I've been able to take out of this tragedy. So, you know, going forward, and I always say going forward, I never say moving on, because there's just no such thing as moving on. You know, you just put one foot in front of the other and you go forward. So anyway, going forward, that's just been something I feel passionate about, and lucky that I'm able to do it. I still work for the airlines, based in LA. I fly mostly international trips as a flight attendant. And so it's a balance. Met a wonderful man, got married 2 years ago. And this person is just, he's amazing, because I remember when I met him in Tokyo. And oddly enough, he was from Phoenix, and we were at this hotel in Tokyo that has a lot of crew members from all over the world would come to the hotel because the airline owned the hotel. So I'm sitting there talking to this man who, this happened like within 6 months after the accident. And I told him my name, and I told him, you know, yeah, I live in Phoenix. And he goes, oh, I live in Phoenix too. And so there was an exchange there, and the light went on. He figured out who I was, and he said, are you who I think you are? And I said, yes. And he goes, oh my gosh, he goes, I don't know what to say to you. And that was the smartest thing anyone's ever said to me, was I don't know what to say. And I told him, I said, don't say anything. I said, just give me a hug. And he did. And so 7 years later, we were married. But anyway, there's so many facets to this journey of grief. And I feel really fortunate to be connected with people like you and Irene and your group. I don't know everyone that well in your group, but I feel really fortunate to be connected with everyone. And I have also connected with Dr. Joanne Cacciatore, who's a wonderful resource, especially, I don't know how many of you folks live in Arizona, but she's in our backyard. She's up by Sedona in Cornwall, and she started a care farm for grieving families called Sela Care Farm, spelled Selah. And if you want more information about her, you can find her care farm on Sela.com. But anyway, I have just found so many incredible people in this journey, you know, people I probably would never have met. And had I met them, I would not have understood, you know, I wouldn't have understood their journey if I had met them in any other circumstance, truly. Anyway, as I said, I don't usually get this emotional, but I'm glad I was able to be authentic, and I was able to be real. And I would love to have people ask me questions if you have questions about anything.
We do. We have questions, and you're just amazing. And I just appreciate so much how honest you are about the journey. And it's true that whenever we've seen you in Phoenix, it's I guess you just maybe had a more public persona, but I love this. I love that you let people know that it isn't always easy. And one of the things that you talked about was that your kids had a knowing, all three of them did. And then you also talked about the fact that you get a lot of signs from them. People are asking if you could elaborate on the signs that you get from them.
Sure, absolutely. Sure. So one of the first signs that I got from them was literally the day of and the immediate days following the accident. I had this barnyard toy, and it was one of those kids' toys that you open like a door and you hear a cow or you hear a horse or a pig or whatever. And this particular toy, it was in the off position, and it would make the sound of the horse whinnying, and it would do it all the time. And it was really strange. I mean, it scared people. I'm serious, it scared, because after the accident, people came and stayed with me, and I had people in my house, and people were with me 24/7 because I think they were too afraid of what I might do. But this toy would go off, and it scared people so bad that some people wouldn't stay with me anymore because it freaked them out. And for me, it was kind of it was a blessing to have that sound. It was so welcome because I knew it was them. And it was funny because it would whinny, and it would only do it when it was off and you weren't touching it. And one night this was months later, when I was basically on my own, and in the middle of the night one time, that thing whinnied, and it kept whinnying over and over and over again, and it wouldn't stop. So I started counting how many whinnies I heard, and I counted and I counted, and I got to 100. I stopped counting at 100, and I was just like, wow, okay, kids, I get it. I get it, finally. So that was one of the probably more significant signs that I received, but some of the other ones are maybe a little funnier, depending on what happened, I would know which kid was doing it, or which kids, just because it was just, because your kids, and when they do certain things, it's like, okay, that kid would do this, and you just know. And Logan would do funny things, like I would find water running that I didn't turn on, or I would find a light on, or I would find lights flickering. That's common, I guess, but I did see that quite a bit too. But even stranger with him, he was like a super good communicator. Like, he would always find a way to communicate with anyone when he was on this earth. And now, going through their things, I would find things that he wrote that would stun me when I would find it and read it. And it's like, that's my son. He's found a way to communicate with me even after all this time. And Luke with his photographs, things like that.
That's beautiful. And I just have to tell you that everyone is talking about how beautiful you are and how incredible your story is. And Beth is asking, and I think this is something that all of us are wondering, can you share how you found the strength to move forward? What made you keep going?
Well, really, the memory of my kids, the memory of them kept me going. It keeps me going every day. My faith keeps me going every day. And I don't like to get into that too much because I don't want to offend anyone, because we all have different belief systems. But between those things, that's given me the strength to move forward, because, I'm here, they're not. I don't know why. I sort of felt like I got left behind, It's pretty weird. But I'm here for some reason. And so I I try to look at that as a sacred thing. And I feel like I have a responsibility to use that time. Gosh, I haven't cried this much. I don't know how you guys did this to me tonight.
We didn't mean to. I'm sorry,
Gosh,
but
no,
you're
it's a
fine.
good thing. I'm telling you, this is a very good thing. It's truthfully, it's super good to feel and to let those feelings come out. So, and that is part of this journey, is you never quite know when it's going to happen. Obviously there's certain circumstances where it's not good for that to happen. When I'm at work, I can't do this, you know, but when I'm in a safe place, it's good for me to feel.
Well, and I have people writing here that you're crying because you feel our love, and we're all sending you tons of love right now, and that's true. And Babette is asking, were you surprised by the signs that you were getting, or did you already believe in all of this? Was it something that you expected, or was it something?
Wow. Okay, that's an excellent question, and I have to tell you that no one's ever asked me that before. I thought I had heard it all, but that's a great question. I would say a little of both. My background is more of a scientific type of background, so I'm kind of one of those "you got to prove it to me" people. You know, for me to really, it's hard for me to just have faith that something is real or not real. On the other hand, you know, the things that I heard and saw, I knew that I heard them, I saw them, and there were other people with me that did too. So it wasn't just that I was losing my mind because I lost my family, you know. Somebody else was with me, and I'm like, okay, this is real. So I think I always had a feeling that there was a lot more to our existence, if you will, than just what we see on the surface. I hadn't had a lot of experience with it. So when I did have experience with it, it confirmed that, you know, I try to keep an open mind. I mean, I always believed that certain things were possible, and when you look at just the things that we do today, like our ability to do this, it's really incredible when you think about it. You know, we're able to communicate. We're not in the same room. I don't even know where you are exactly, but, you know, but we're able to talk, and other people are able to listen. And so why should we think that other things are so, you know, impossible?
That's beautifully said. I agree 100%. I think that, you know, they're talking about a soul phone now. And back when Alexander Graham Bell talked about a telephone, we didn't believe in that either. And lo and behold, there's a wonderful way of communicating, not just by telephone, but with cell phones now that have taken over our lives, actually.
Well, yeah.
But,
here's another example, and you know, a lot of these things are things that we've taken for granted for so long, that we just take for granted that it's there, but we never really think about, now, how is this really possible? For example, my husband, who's an airline pilot, and we both used to fly a lot, and he could call me, which we don't normally do because we're not supposed to do that, but we could communicate, texting or whatever. He could be halfway around the world over the ocean and send me a message in Phoenix, or vice versa. And you think, I just go, how is that possible? I mean, it is though, and we do it all the time, and we don't even think about it. So, you know, I have to try to simplify it in my mind like that, that there's so many things in this universe that on the surface, we don't really understand it, but we're able to do it. So why would anything else be that hard to understand? I mean, that's not the right word. Why would anything else be that hard to really conceive that it could be true?
that's exactly right. That makes total sense. And I'm wondering myself, I feel like a lot of conversation on our site lately has been about people telling us, you're so courageous. I could never live. I could never survive the passing of one of my children. And I know that a lot of times that comes from a really, really good place in people's hearts, trying to explain that we are amazingly courageous. But do you have any thoughts on that? Because I would assume that you get that quite frequently.
Yeah, I do. I do. And usually what I hear is, I don't know how you do it. And to be truthful, when the kids were here, I didn't know how I did it. And people would tell me the same thing. So, you know, I think that there is a comfort in knowing that they are with me, even though that they're not physically. And that the physical aspect of it is extremely hard, obviously, because we long to be with them, to touch them, to hold them, to kiss them. And physically, we can't do that anymore. But having said that, it's extremely comforting to know that they are here with us, and they're just here in a different way. And the fact that our love transcends into something even, you know, even greater than probably we ever realized that it would.
Well, that's beautifully said. And Irene is asking an interesting question. How did you find HPH, Helping Parents Heal? I think it might have been me who reached out to you, but can you remember how that happened?
I wish I could answer that. I'm not quite sure. And I think that's another one of those incredible things that we seem to find. We seem to have like a magnetism towards things that we need, and things that, you know, complete us as people, and when we're ready for them. So that's the other interesting part of that, is that there are connections that we make through this. And that's such a good question too, because there are other people and other entities like that I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember how I found them or if they found me. I don't recall. I just know that we found each other. And
or maybe I think that it's more important to realize that it's our kids getting us together.
oh, there you go. And that's even better. I like that better. Absolutely, without a doubt.
Which is wonderful.
Without a doubt. In fact, you know, there's a quick story behind that. The night that I met my husband, I was on a trip and I was extremely tired because I had flown in, you know, from Phoenix to LA to Tokyo. And I was lying in bed and I knew I needed to get up, but I didn't want to. And I swear my kids pulled me out of bed that night and walked me right over to him. Sat me, told me where to sit, and walked me right over to him. You know, I still feel that way. So that's a good point, because I think they do act, if you will, as our angels, ambassadors, and kind of help us with our direction.
I think that you're exactly right. And I just want to read something that Rose has written that's so beautiful. She says, your tears and vulnerability also show us your strength. It has been 11 months since my son transitioned, and I did not think I would make it, but working on my connection and relationship with my son is what gives me strength and hope, especially when he comes through to me or a medium, and when I hear him and see him, and also when he inspires me, helping me to write just as he does. Thank you for being an inspiration today. So
Nice.
I just want you to know that we're all so inspired by you. And, you know, I think that Beth is saying that this whole thing about coming together is the law of attraction, which is true. I think that it's that. I think that it's helped by our kids as well, though, which is wonderful. Badisha is saying, yes, so true. Our love for our child just grows stronger. 5 months since my only child transitioned, and while the grief is so immense, so is my love for her and my understanding of her love for me as she works so hard to share messages and signs with me, which is true. I think that all of us are very fortunate in the fact that we do realize that there's more, and we do realize that our kids are with us every step of the way. And even more importantly, all of these kids who are on this call tonight, but just in general, are all together having a blast. And I feel that every time that we get together, that they are just having so much fun. And being, one of the things that I've heard is that they high five each other every time that they're able to get parents to smile. So that's something that they also work on, is helping us heal and helping us experience joy again. And I'm so glad that you have been able to find someone to bring joy into your life, which obviously was your kids who helped you do that, which is wonderful. So I wanted to just see, we have so many people saying we so appreciate your vulnerability and sharing your story with us. And then Rose is saying, I was just going to say that all of our kids are here in this meeting together. I love this, which is of course true, as well as talking about the whole thing about the telephone. Sebi's mom is saying, what about giving birth? Giving birth is another amazing thing. A person comes out of nowhere. It's amazing and crazy and a miracle, but no one thinks about it or questions it, which is true. I mean, obviously that's another.
Yeah, that's an absolute miracle, without a doubt, absolute miracle.
So,
and by the way, one that, I'll just interject this, and she said that, one that I never thought I would have, because I had breast cancer twice, and I also had some other feminine issues that I was told I could never have kids. So that just made the being able to have kids, I had already accepted that in my mind that I couldn't have children. And I actually got pregnant unexpectedly when I was 38. And I had Morgan at 39, Logan at 40, and Luke at 42. So that is, I mean, it's all a miracle. But for me, it was even that much crazier because I had given up. I thought I would never have kids. And it just, yeah, what a miracle.
Well, that is beautiful and wonderful. And you look way too young to have had kids later in life. So I'm amazed. But also, Roseanne is asking an interesting question. It's a little more serious, but did you ever have any inkling about something happening to your children the way that they did?
Gosh, you guys are amazing, and it's hard to, this is so unusual because I've never done a meeting like this on this topic, but this is really, it's really neat, and it's a little challenging on the other hand because I can't see your faces.
Oh,
your beautiful faces. I tried to scroll through, but I can't really see you guys, but I love your questions and I really appreciate them. And that is another, you guys are amazing, your questions. Yes, I did. I didn't know it at the time, but I think it's called precognition. I may not be using terms exactly perfectly, but I think that's what it is. And I was driving home one time and I turned the corner and I just had a vision. And what my vision wasn't really the way things unfolded, but it's, symbolic. And in my vision, there was police tape, that yellow tape, and it was all the way around my house. And I just remember turning the corner and I had that vision. And in my vision, I thought, oh my God, what happened? What happened? And that was, I had that maybe, I'm not sure exactly, maybe a month before the accident happened.
Yeah. Well, so you did. And, one of the reasons that probably Roseanne was asking this is that so many of us, moms and dads, have an idea, even from the day that these kids are born, that they might not be ours for forever, and that they might have a different plan in life than what we would hope for them. But I truly believe that there was absolutely nothing that you could do that day, that it was going to happen that way, and that it's happened that way for all of our kids. And it was supposed to happen that way. They're home now, and we're still in school, and we're learning stuff, which is really good. And they're very proud of everything that we learn. But I wanted to just tell you a few other things. Jacqueline is saying, thank you so much, Karen, for showing us your true self today. You have truly inspired me. And then Babette is saying, thank you for talking with us about your children. So fun that you ended up doing equine therapy after your kids kept winning with that toy, which is adorable. I was thinking about that too. That's really funny. Mary's saying, thank you. You so inspired me. Rukaya is saying, thank you so much for sharing. And let's see, Badish is saying, I'm so happy to be here. And thank you. Your story and strength has helped each of us go forward a little more today. I know when I wake up at 5:20 a.m. for a meeting, my baby girl makes sure I am up and in attendance. So she's attending in India, which is, we have quite a few members who are there, and it's wonderful that she's able to do that. Sandra is saying, thank you for your big heart and using horses to help others. My horses truly helped me in this journey of grief, which is true, that horses are just some of the best ways to heal, that they're just amazing. Karen is saying, thank you so much for sharing. Unless you've lost a child, we're not comfortable talking about death. It's healing to share, which is true. And then Lynette is saying, along the lines of what we were saying, that we have this pre-knowing. From the time I found out I was pregnant with my first son, I felt I would have a child pass. I had my first son pass almost a year ago. I have 2 remaining children. And Joan is saying, thank you for sharing your pain and your joy. And I am just so grateful that you have been able, let's see. Oh, Jacqueline is on, and Irene is saying that maybe we should just recognize that Jacqueline had 3 children pass in a car accident as well. So I just, obviously it's hard to compare any kind of passing, but I'd like to just say that our hearts go out to everyone on here, and certainly
Absolutely.
when something like that happens all at once, it's very, very difficult. And anyway, I appreciate so much that you're on here, and I hope that sometime soon we'll be able to see you in person again, which would be wonderful.
Yeah,
And not in the very, very near future, but sometime soon.
probably not. Yeah.
This is the next best thing, though. And there's, let's see, Valentina is saying, it is so enormous. Thank you for sharing. Much love. There's, let's see, and Lindsay is saying, I have custody of my son's little boy. This week he's at equestrian camp. He loves it. He seems so happy, which is wonderful.
Great.
And Susan is saying, thank you for bearing your soul. So what we do at the end of these meetings, and it's now almost 6 o'clock, is that we say goodbye by having everyone unmute and say goodbye and thank you. And this is her book, yes, Angels 3. So if you all haven't read it, it's an amazing book, and I highly recommend it. And so thank you so much, Karen. Thank you all for being on here. And again, please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you.
Yes.
It was
Karen.
very
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Elizabeth and Irene. Thank you, ladies.
Karen, God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.